In 1979, a man named Itzhak Bentov boarded American Airlines Flight 191 out of Chicago. He was a biomedical engineer, the guy who invented the cardiac catheter that's used in basically every hospital on Earth. But the reason he matters to this video has nothing to do with medicine. 6 months before that flight, Bentov had measured something that should have been impossible. He'd found a direct, measurable link between human consciousness and the quantum structure of reality. And he could back it up with data that connected modern physics to ancient teachings going back thousands of years. Unfortunately, he never got to publish it. Flight 191 crashed on takeoff. It remains the deadliest aviation disaster in American history. Bentov's research went down with him. 2 years later, the CIA quietly declassified a document called the Gateway Process Report, and buried inside it were Bentov's exact findings. His models, his measurements, his conclusions, all referenced by name in a government intelligence document that was never meant to be public. The same findings that quantum physicists are now confirming in labs around the world, 45 years later. So what did he find, and why does it matter to you right now? Before we touch quantum physics, we need to go way back, because the ideas that modern scientists are now discovering aren't actually new. They're ancient, and they were deliberately kept from the general public. Around 300 before the Common Era, a collection of texts started circulating in Egypt. They were attributed to a figure called Hermes Trismegistus, which translates to Hermes the Thrice Great. These texts, known as the Hermetica, laid out an entire system for understanding how reality works. And the very first principle was this: the all is mind, the universe is mental. Now, I know how that sounds. It sounds like something you'd see printed on a tote bag at a yoga retreat. But stay with me here, because the Hermetic teachings weren't vague feel-good quotes. They were a detailed system with 7 core principles: mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. Each one describing how consciousness interacts with the physical world. And here's the thing that always gets left out. These teachings weren't available to everyone. They were passed down through mystery schools, reserved for initiates who went through years of preparation before they were even allowed to hear them. The high priests in Egypt understood something about the relationship between mind and matter, and they made sure that knowledge stayed within a very small circle. The question is, why go through all that trouble to keep it restricted? Because whoever understands how consciousness actually shapes physical reality holds a kind of leverage that makes money, armies, and political power look like toys. That's not an exaggeration. Think about it. If you can operate the system at the level of the source code, you don't need to compete at the surface level anymore. And this is where things start to get weird. Because the same principles that Egyptian priests carved into temple walls, the same ideas that Hermetic philosophers taught in secret to their students by candlelight, are now showing up in peer-reviewed physics journals, published by researchers at major universities. And nobody in the mainstream is connecting the dots. So let me do it. Let's talk about what's actually happening in quantum physics labs right now. Because the discoveries coming out in the last couple of years are honestly a little unsettling for anyone who still thinks consciousness is just a side effect of brain chemistry. You've probably heard of the double slit experiment by now. It's become kind of a cliche in this space, but it's a cliche for a reason, so bear with me. Scientists fire particles through a barrier with 2 openings. When nobody is measuring, the particles act like waves. They spread out, interfere with each other, go through both slits at once. Weird, but okay. But the moment you place a detector to observe which slit the particle goes through, that wave behavior collapses. The particle starts acting like, well, a particle, a single point. Like it somehow knew it was being watched and changed its behavior accordingly. This experiment has been replicated hundreds of times since the 1920s. It's not controversial. The controversy is about what it means. Specifically, what counts as observation. Is it the measuring device, the photons hitting the detector, or does it actually require something conscious on the other end? For decades, the mainstream physics community pushed hard on the idea that consciousness had zero to do with it. Just the physical interaction of the equipment was enough to cause the collapse. End of story. Go home. Stop being mystical about it. But in March 2025, a cognitive psychologist at Swansea University named Darren Edwards published a paper in Frontiers in Computational Neuroscience, and he basically kicked that door wide open again. He proposed something called the N-frame model, and his argument was pretty direct. He said that the consciousness of a human observer is a crucial part of quantum observations, and that a person's conscious thoughts can influence how quantum possibilities collapse into one definite outcome. His exact words were, "The observer is not a passive recorder, but an active shaper of experience." I want you to sit with that for a second. A researcher at a legitimate university published in a peer-reviewed journal in 2025, saying that your conscious mind actively shapes what becomes real at the quantum level. That's not some guy on a podcast. That's the scientific establishment starting to crack. And Edwards wasn't the only one. Earlier that same year, a paper published through Oxford Academic presented evidence that quantum coherence, the phenomenon where particles behave as a unified system even when they're separated, may actually occur inside the human brain, inside tiny protein structures called microtubules. This is based on the ORC-OR theory that Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff have been developing for years, and for most of that time, other scientists treated it like a fringe idea. But then the lab results started coming in. In 2024, researchers demonstrated quantum superradiance in microtubules at room temperature. That was a big deal, because one of the main arguments against quantum processes in the brain was that it was too warm and wet for quantum effects to survive. Turns out they do survive, and they get stronger when microtubules link up into larger networks. Even wilder when scientists applied anesthetic drugs, the ones that knock you unconscious. Those quantum effects in the microtubules got dampened. Turn off consciousness, quantum activity drops. Turn it back on, quantum activity returns. That's not philosophy anymore, that's measurement. And it's pointing towards something that a lot of people in the scientific community are still uncomfortable saying out loud. That consciousness might be a quantum phenomenon, not just an emergent property of neurons firing. But there's another piece to this that nobody's talking about, and honestly, I think it might be the most important one. While quantum physicists were studying particles and brain structures, a completely separate group of researchers was discovering something equally strange about the heart. The HeartMath Institute has been studying the heart's electromagnetic field for over 25 years now. And what they found is genuinely bizarre. Your heart doesn't just pump blood, it generates an electromagnetic field that is roughly 100 times stronger than the one produced by your brain. Not twice as strong, not 10 times, 100 times. And they can measure it several feet away from your body using a squid magnetometer, which is the same type of device used in quantum physics laboratories. But here's where it gets really interesting. That electromagnetic field changes depending on what you're feeling. When you're frustrated, anxious, or angry, the pattern of your heart signal is erratic, choppy, all over the place. The researchers call it an incoherent signal. But when you shift into a genuine feeling of appreciation, compassion, or even just calm focus, that same signal smooths out into this clean, ordered wave pattern. They call that heart coherence. And this isn't just about your mood. When your heart enters that coherent state, it starts sending different signals to your brain. And those signals change how your brain actually functions. Better focus, better decision making, better emotional regulation. The heart literally sends more neural signals up to the brain than the brain sends down to the heart, which is the opposite of what I was taught in school, and probably the opposite of what you were taught too. Now here's the part that really got me. HeartMath researchers showed that when one person is in a coherent heart state, that person's heart signal can be detected in another person's brainwaves, even when they're not touching, just sitting a few feet apart. Your heart is literally broadcasting your emotional state into the space around you, and other people's nervous systems are picking it up. Not consciously, not through body language or facial expressions, through electromagnetic fields. The ancient Egyptians called the heart the seat of intelligence. It was the only organ they preserved during mummification. They scooped the brain out through the nose and threw it away. For centuries, historians assumed the Egyptians were just ignorant about biology. Turns out they might have been measuring something about the heart's electromagnetic function that took us until the 21st century and superconducting quantum interference devices to rediscover. Okay, so let's connect all of this, because when you lay the quantum physics next to the heart research, next to the ancient hermetic teachings, a pretty clear picture starts to form. And it's not mystical, it's mechanical. First, quantum physics tells us that observation plays a role in determining which possibility becomes reality. Particles sit in a state of potential, and they collapse into one specific outcome when they're observed. The N-frame model from 2025 suggests your conscious expectations may influence which outcome they collapse into. Second, neuroscience is now showing that quantum coherence may actually happen inside the microtubules of your brain. Your consciousness isn't just some abstract philosophical concept. It might be a literal quantum process, which means it's connected to the same physics that governs everything else in the universe. Third, HeartMath proved that your emotional state generates a measurable electromagnetic field that extends beyond your body and affects the biological systems around you, including other people's brain activity. Stack those three together, and you get something that the Hermetic tradition described thousands of years ago. Your consciousness, amplified by your emotional state and broadcast through your heart's electromagnetic field, interacts with the quantum fabric of reality. I know that sounds like a big claim, but every single piece of it is backed by published research. This isn't me interpreting tea leaves. These are papers you can go read right now. And this is where it stops being abstract and starts getting personal, because this framework explains a lot of things that most people just write off as luck or coincidence or charisma. Why some people walk into a room and shift the entire energy without saying a word. Why certain people seem to attract opportunities, while others who are working just as hard or harder keep hitting walls. Why your gut feeling about a person usually turns out to be right. It's not magic, and it's not just positive thinking. Your body is broadcasting an electromagnetic signal shaped by your internal state, and that signal is interacting with the people and systems around you at a level that nobody's consciously aware of. The ancient mystery schools didn't teach meditation because it was relaxing. They taught it because it was a technology, a way to bring the heart into coherence, clean up the signal you're broadcasting, and interact with the quantum field from a state of intention instead of just reacting to whatever's happening around you. And in December 2025, this whole picture got one more piece. A physicist named Joachim Kepler published a paper in Frontiers in Human Neuroscience presenting evidence that conscious states may arise from the brain's ability to resonate with something called the quantum vacuum, the zero-point field. This is the background energy field that exists everywhere in the universe, even in completely empty space. In simpler terms, Kepler's work suggests that your brain might not produce consciousness at all. Your brain might function more like an antenna, tuning into a field of awareness that already exists everywhere. The Kybalion said it in 7 words. The all is mind, the universe is mental. Same insight, different century, different vocabulary, same conclusion. So if this knowledge has been around for thousands of years, and if modern physics is now confirming it, the obvious question is, why isn't everyone taught this in school? The short answer is that it was never meant to be public. The Hermetic texts were locked inside mystery schools from the very beginning. You couldn't just walk in off the street and ask for the curriculum. You went through years of testing, ritual, and purification before anyone told you anything of substance. The initiates were hand-selected, and the knowledge was transmitted orally so it couldn't be copied or spread. When the Roman Empire adopted Christianity as its official religion in the 4th century, Hermetic teachings got classified as pagan heresy. Emperor Theodosius ordered temples destroyed, libraries were burned or scattered, and for over 1,000 years in Europe, this knowledge went completely underground. It resurfaced briefly during the Italian Renaissance when Cosimo de' Medici, one of the richest men in Europe, commissioned a translation of the Corpus Hermeticum in 1463. He actually told his scholars to put down the Plato translation they were working on and prioritize the Hermetic texts. That's how important he considered them. But even then, the knowledge stayed in elite circles. Alchemists, philosophers, members of groups like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Rosicrucian orders, Freemasonic lodges. Always the same core ideas, always behind closed doors. And honestly, the suppression wasn't just about religion, it was strategic. Because if you understand that your state of being shapes your reality, you stop looking outward for permission and validation. You stop waiting for someone above you in the hierarchy to give you a shot. You start operating from a completely different set of assumptions about how life works. And that makes you very, very hard to manage. The entire system we operate in, the schooling, the corporate ladder, the media cycle, all of it runs on one core assumption, that reality is something that happens to you, that you're a passive receiver, that you need external authorities to tell you what's real, what's possible, and what you deserve. The hermetic tradition said the exact opposite. You are the operator. Reality is the output, and the interface between the two is your internal state. That's the same thing the quantum physicists are measuring in their labs right now. So where does all of this leave you? You've now got 3 completely independent lines of evidence pointing at the same conclusion. Ancient hermetic philosophy going back thousands of years, modern quantum physics from 2024 and 2025, and decades of heart coherence research from HeartMath, all converging on the same point. Your consciousness interacts with the quantum field. Your heart broadcasts an electromagnetic signal shaped by your emotional state. And that signal influences the systems and people around you in ways that are measurable but invisible to the naked eye. Knowing this on an intellectual level is a good start. But the ancient practitioners didn't just know it. They built entire daily practices around it. They trained their ability to enter specific internal states on command. Not because it felt nice, but because they understood that a coherent internal state produces a coherent signal, and a coherent signal gets different results than a chaotic one. Every conversation you walk into, every decision you make under pressure, every room you enter, you are broadcasting. The question is whether you're doing it on purpose or whether you're just running whatever emotional program your environment installed in you that morning. The difference between the person who commands a room without raising their voice and the person who shrinks even when they're the most qualified one, there isn't confidence. It's coherence. It's the signal their body is putting out. And that signal is trainable. It's not a personality trait you're born with. It's a physiological state you can learn to generate whenever you want. The hermetic tradition called this the art of mental transmutation. Modern researchers call it psychophysiological coherence. Different vocabulary, same skill, same results. Itzhak Bentov's research was lost in a plane crash in 1979, but the truth he was measuring didn't go down with him. It just took 45 years for the rest of science to catch up. The ancients encoded it in temples. The elite guarded it behind closed doors. And now it's sitting in open access research papers that you can pull up on your phone. If you want the actual step-by-step protocol for getting your heart into coherence and using that signal intentionally, I made a whole video breaking down the exact technique. It's called heart coherence, the scientific way to attract anything, and it's on screen right now.